Hey everyone, how's it going? I want to do a video about Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy, which I just buddy read with Hannah from Hannah's Books, and it was a wonderful buddy read, and this was actually my own second time reading this book. I read it for the first time probably when I was 21 or 22, when I was in a class in college, and the class was devoted entirely to the works of Thomas Hardy and then D.H. Lawrence, who took a lot from Thomas Hardy. And this was the last of 4 novels by Thomas Hardy that we read in that class. The other 3 that we read were Return of the Native, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and The Mayor of Casterbridge. And then we got to Jude the Obscure. And Jude the Obscure is, even by Thomas Hardy's standards, rather bleak. Thomas Hardy does not have a reputation for writing particularly happy, cheery stories, but this one I think is an outlier even among his body of work. So what this novel is about, it's about the eponymous character Jude Fawley, who is orphaned when he's very young. He doesn't really know either of his parents, and his parents did not have a happy marriage. One of them committed suicide and the other one died not too long after the other one. And Jude has been raised primarily by his aunt, who is not exactly a nice woman, although she is one of the more intelligent, wiser characters. But Jude is told from a very young age that given his status as an orphan and his status as someone living in poverty, and his status as the son of 2 people who died very tragically, and 2 people who had an unhappy marriage, that he would have been better off not being born. And you kind of see the psychological results of him being told that for so long throughout the novel, and the way that he thinks about himself and his life. He clearly struggles with low self-esteem and depression, and later in the novel, alcoholism. But early in the novel does have a certain kind of optimism about him. He dreams of going to a place called Christminster, which Thomas Hardy not modeled after Oxford, so it's a fictional location, but it's modeled after Oxford. This novel, like most of Thomas Hardy's fiction, takes place in the fictional county of England called Wessex, which is named after the old Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Wessex. So Jude, the young Jude, dreams of going to Christminster, to this great prestigious university, and sort of, you know, pulling himself up by his bootstraps out of poverty into the middle class and getting educated. And he actually wants to go into the clergy. He's, for the first half of this novel, deeply religious. And so he starts to study by himself. He can't afford to go to school. He has to work for his aunt. But he studies on his own. He teaches himself Latin and Greek, reading the classics. And this novel, like a lot of Hardy's fiction, is peppered with classical and literary and biblical references. Thomas Hardy is an intensely referential author, but I think you can particularly see the influence of the Greek classics on his work, because this novel and the other novels of his that I've read have seemed to be structured a lot like a Greek tragedy, because there's always a small cast of characters. There's always usually 4 characters, and usually 2 of them are kind of the core cast, and then one of them is like plays a slightly bigger role, and then the 4th is like a side character. And then there are like very, very small side roles, but generally in Hardy novels you'll find that there is a cast of 4 main characters, 2 of whom you really need to pay attention to. And that reminds me a lot of Greek tragedies. In Greek tragedies, for a long time there were 2 characters, and then there were 3, and then that became kind of the formula, and then obviously there got added more characters. But anyway, and there's always kind of a moment of anagnorisis near the end of Thomas Hardy novels as well, and that's a term that's often used to discuss Greek drama. This moment of sort of revelation, of some sort of revelation or realization that is the real crux of the tragedy. You know, where, for example, the easiest example is where Oedipus and Jocasta realize that, you know, they're mother and son, and they've been married and having this incestuous relationship without realizing it. That would be a moment of anagnorisis, and a lot of Thomas Hardy's fiction has this moment of anagnorisis. And it also has a very strong sense of kind of fate behind it, kind of inevitability, which Greek tragedy has as well. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit off track. So Jude teaches himself a lot about the classics of Greece and Rome, and about religion and theology, And Jude is actually Thomas Hardy's most autobiographical character. He's a lot like Thomas Hardy was, self-educated from a working class background, and felt a little bit jilted by the establishment, so to speak, because one of the major cruxes of the story is that, as you might imagine, Jude does not have much luck getting an inroad into Christminster. He, at some point in the story, gets an apprenticeship as a stone carver, and then is able to sort of use that to make a living, and then moves to Christminster and tries to get into university and fails. And another thing that sort of comes to disrupt his dreams is a woman. He meets this young, attractive woman named Arabella Dawn, and it's very interesting that her last name is Dawn, like an Oxford Dawn. But this young woman named Arabella Dawn, who's kind of eager to get herself married, to have a secure life, and she thinks that Jude will be a good husband for her to have a secure life, so she kind of, the way Hardy tells it, she kind of seduces him in a way, although one of Jude's failings, as he points out himself late in the novel, is that he is very susceptible to women, and so Arabella finds it very easy to kind of have him in the palm of her hand, and she does, and she tells him that she's pregnant at one point, and so then he has to do the right thing as prescribed by society at the time and marry her. And then after they get married, she reveals that she was lying about being pregnant, that she just wanted to force him to marry her. And as you can imagine, the marriage does not go particularly well, and they separate, and Arabella moves to Australia and wants to forget about her marriage to Jude, and Jude can kind of pretend that he was never married after he moves to Christminster. And after Jude has split up with Arabella and moved to Christminster to try and get an education, he meets his cousin, Sue Bridehead. And Sue, I think, is the most fascinating character in the novel, even though she's not the title character. I think she is the most fascinating character. So she is, when we first meet her, training to become a teacher, and that goes awry after a scandal involving Jude, and as you can probably imagine, Jude falls for her pretty quickly, but Sue also kind of has some feelings for another older man named Richard Phillotson, who is kind of the fourth character, and Richard Phillotson is an older man who was also at one point a mentor to Jude, and he himself is a teacher. So a lot of the novel is taken up by this sort of love triangle between Sue, Jude, and Phillotson, as he's called. And the reason that I say Sue is such a fascinating character is because she, for one thing, I think she's the smartest character. I think she has most of the most insightful lines. She is this unconventional woman, this sort of quote-unquote liberated woman who questions society's morals, questions the institution of marriage, but at the same time, she kind of questions, she kind of still feels limited by them, you know, she kind of still feels the pressure of them on her life, and still can't quite make a full break with society's conventions that she wants to. And that is kind of the crux of her character, is this dissonance between her intellectual criticism of the societal conventions that she's bound by, and her inability to break free of them. And unlike Jude, she is kind of a free thinker. She does not go to church. She criticizes religion. She doesn't say explicitly that she's an atheist, but it would be easy to believe that, at least early in the novel, she is an atheist. One thing that's interesting about her is that I at one point sort of jokingly bestowed upon her myself in a Facebook status the nickname of Mrs. Mixed Signals, because she kind of has feelings for Jude, but seems to be hesitant to express them fully. You know, in one scene, she'll be telling him how much she wants to be with him, how dear he is to her. But she won't ever say that she loves him. She won't ever say that directly, but she will sort of tell him how much she cares for him, how much she wants him. But then once he reciprocates her affections, she'll suddenly pull back and say, "Oh, but you know, let's not be too hasty. Let's not do too much, you know." And if he tries to kiss her, she'll like draw back. And so she kind of plays this back and forth game with Jude, where she's sort of, you could, from a certain point of view, say that she's egging him on, and then sort of dashing his hopes. That might be a bit of a malicious reading of it, but she does definitely seem to not quite entirely know what she wants, even though she is so intelligent and articulate. You know, she really does have the line in the book that I think really encapsulates the themes of the novel, and I want to read that quote to you because it is such a great quote. And the quote is this, and she says this directly to Jude. "I have been thinking," she continued, still in the tone of one brimful of feeling, "that the social molds civilization fits us into have no more relation to our actual shapes than the conventional shapes of the constellations have to the real star patterns." And I think that that's really the thematic crux of the whole novel, is how societal conventions and conventional religious morality are not really conducive to human happiness in any way. And that, I think, is also encapsulated in the fact that Arabella, you know, this woman who you can probably tell from what I've said is not particularly likable or sympathetic, comes out of the novel the one character who's the least sort of tainted in the eyes of society and morality. And anyway, if I were to go in depth on just how horrific the fallout of this theme of the, you know, limits that societal conventions put on people is in the context of the story of this novel, then it would put me into the realm of major spoilers, and I don't want to do that. But basically, that's what this novel is about, and it's why the essay that I wrote in the class I took on Thomas Hardy about this novel was about how it's the most depressing novel ever written, because it's basically about how the principles that are supposed to sort of guide our lives are not going to ever really make us happy. In fact, they are frequently going to make us miserable. And that is a powerful story, and some people might see it as overly nihilistic, and I might agree with them, but, you know, I think that there is some kind of an elevation when a great work of art is created around even the most tragic of stories. You know, a story like this, or a story like The Great Gatsby, or Hamlet, or Oedipus, what have you. When there is a great work of literature written about it, there is a certain elevation, and I think that's why we return to tragic works of art, to really depressing works of art. Anyway, so, you know, I think that this is a great novel. There is great writing, there are some great lines in it. I think that one possible weakness of the novel is that there are some children who appear at one point as characters, to the degree that they are real characters, because one of the weaknesses of the novel, I think, is that I don't think Thomas Hardy is very good at writing children. As far as I know, there aren't really any children who appear in a major way in any of his other fiction, and I think that that's for the best, because the children who appear in this novel are ostensibly a big part of it, but have hardly any lines, and often you would be hard-pressed to even tell that they're around, even though they are in a scene. And there's one child who does have some lines and does sort of have something of a personality, who is just hard to believe as a character, although I think that one child does capture something really powerful about the psychology of orphans and children who are emotionally neglected, and so there's a kernel in that character who I think is very powerful. But on the whole, I don't think Thomas Hardy is great at writing children. But that's my one major criticism of this novel. But if you've read it, then let me know what you think of it. If you haven't read it, let me know if you want to read it. If you've read any other Thomas Hardy, let me know. But anyway, I will leave it at that, and talk to you all later. Bye.